Bernard,
We,
hello, Paul.
we all know each other, so why don't you guys add into the slide?
Yeah, now,
Thank you.
I think, right, I'm recording. So, okay, we'll make a start then. The business growth formula. Right, now this was working perfectly until now. So, you know who we are. I'm Bernard. I'm a business growth mentor. Background as a chartered financial planner. I spent 20 years in senior sales and marketing roles, mainly with clerical medical. Before that, 12 years in college, higher education, lecturing, business, finance, marketing. And before that, I trained in accountancy. And over to you, Paul, my colleague, Paul Hopkins.
Yeah, I'm Paul, Vine Business Support. Many years in frontline sales roles. At Vine, we offered a range of business support services. And during this this current break, we're repositioning the business so we become more service-led than consultancy-led. And at some stage, Karen, I want to talk to you about how we go about branding the type of business that I'm thinking of it being.
Problem?
Okay, right. Right, so as I'm sure you remember from last time, the idea is we want to go through a formula that always works if you apply it, and you can guarantee to grow any business if you applied the formula. Give you tips and hints to help you, and then give you some short-term things that you could do right now so that as we're all opening up again, you'll be able to hit the ground running and, you know, make an impact on your profit and your cash flow. Does that sound fair enough? So, just as a reminder, the first week we looked at all the elements you need to include in your marketing, and I think you both had, have you both had copies of that one-page handout that summarizes it all? I'm sure you have.
Possibly.
All right.
I can't remember now.
It's, oh well, I'll send it you again. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll send it again.
Stuff off you anyway.
The second week we looked at how you generate more leads. That was Paul, I think. The third week we looked at how you convert more leads. Today we're going to look at how you can maximize the business you get from existing and past customers, which is a sort of neglected area really, because a lot of people think it's all about getting new business all the time, but actually it's actually quite important to get as much business as you can from people who've dealt with you and trusted you before. And then next week, we're going to look at systemizing processes and resilience. I think what we're saying. And then the final week, we'll sort of summarize the whole thing and, you know, draw it all together. Okay to move on? Right, so just to remind you, this is the business growth formula. So what it says is if you get all those 9 elements into your marketing pieces, and you generate more leads, and you convert more leads, and you get more business from existing customers by maximizing existing customers, and you systemize the whole thing, then what you get is exponential growth. And what that means is, like if each of these were 5%, you wouldn't get 25% at the end. It's all multiplied together. So the effect you get overall is multiplied. So every one of these, a small improvement can make a huge difference at the end of the day. Fair enough? So I'll be leading today's presentation. So that's me, a business growth advisor. So looking at existing customers, there's basically 4 areas that you can work on to maximize the business you get from them. The first thing is to move them along the scale from being just customers to advocates who basically recommend you and promote you to other people. The second thing is to get people to buy more often and bigger amounts when they do buy. The third thing is to get them to spend more each time they buy from you. And the fourth thing is to get them to do it for longer. In other words, for them to stay with you longer. So you've got more longevity, less, what's the word, attrition they call it, don't they? So those are the 4 elements I'm going to consider today. Okay? Obviously, if you've got any questions, just feel free to pipe, you know, to say so. Or if you want to put anything in the chat box, I think, can you see the chat, Paul, or do I have to look out for it?
No, we can watch the chat.
Yeah, okay. Right. So moving on. Right. Nearly went backwards. Right. This is a great expression, acres of diamonds. I've seen this in a few sort of marketing books in various places. But the idea is that this is a true story, apparently. There was this farmer in South Africa who was bored of farming, and he heard about this diamond rush at the Kimberley diamond mine and various other places. So he decided he wanted to take part in that. So he sold his farm and went off to look for diamonds. The person who bought the farm was visited a few years later by some person travelling through who happened to see this big rock on the mantelpiece. And he said, "Oh, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, it's just something I picked up in the stream on the farm." And he said, he looked at it and he said, "Do you know what this is?" And he said, "No." He said, "This is probably the biggest diamond I've ever seen." And it turned out that this farm had a river running through it, and the river was full of diamonds. So the analogy is that we're all sitting on acres of diamonds. So our existing clients, our existing customers, our past customers, they are our acres of diamonds. And rather than spending all our time going looking elsewhere, we'd be well advised to make sure that we're making the most of the acres of diamonds we've currently got. So how could we do that? Well, we could have a referral system where we give rewards for referrals. Has anyone done that?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, if I get a BNI referral, they get rewarded by BNI points.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. In BNI, you've got a referral scheme, I suppose.
I give them the points. BNI do.
Yeah. Obviously, we could have systems in place to get more testimonials and more reviews, and always ask for testimonials. We could make regular proactive contacts. So we could do things like a newsletter or just a series of regular offers to be establishing, contact with our customers rather than expecting them to come to us all the time. We could make sure that there's nothing in our business that would deter people from dealing with us. So it's called moments of truth. That again, this was a Scandinavian airline that wasn't doing very well, and a new owner bought it and basically realized there were lots of little things that were putting people off from dealing with them, like, rude service, like the planes were dirty, like, the waiting rooms were dirty, various things that just looked tatty and not very nice. And I've got a real life example of something similar. I worked with an Asian restaurant in Coventry a few years ago, and they had a cracked window. The main window at the front was cracked, and it had been like this for ages. And I said, well, that'll put people off coming in, because it doesn't matter how nice it is inside. It was nice inside, to be fair, but it doesn't matter how nice it is inside. If the window's cracked on the outside, people are just going to assume that it's not very nice inside, and it puts people off coming in. And there's all those little things that people, can be true about our business, but if we don't realize them, they can put people off using us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, same goes for branding, really. If your branding is hideous, people are going to assume that you are cheap and nasty and probably hideous yourself.
Yeah, fair point.
And it might be true.
Yeah, fair point. Right, this is a really good one. A customer welcome letter. Now, the idea here is, and a welcome pack, the idea here is it sets the relationship on the right footing straight away, and it means they're more likely to stay with you. And actually, I've just had a real life example myself, because I've become part of a team called AVN, Added Value Network. They specialize in coaching accountants, and I've become part of their coaching team, a couple of days a week or one day a week. But I've just had a pack through from them, a big, basket, hamper with big ribbons on and loads of biscuits and sweets and all sorts in there. And, that's their shock and awe customer welcome pack. And it's really nice. It makes you feel really good about sort of dealing with them. So again, there's probably an idea there that we could all use.
Interesting, because my one of my girls, she joined Innocent, the smoothie people.
Yeah.
And her offer letter, her job offer letter, was strapped to a pack of smoothies.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there anything there that we could do? It's worth thinking about, basically.
Yeah, I could send someone a flamingo.
Yeah. I'll catch them, you send them.
Well,
yeah, I mean, at the moment, what I do is I send a welcome pack in the form of a PDF, which just sets out, what to expect, how to work with me, what the boundaries are. And then I send them a present when the job is completed.
Yeah.
That's if I've got their actual address. A lot of the time, I'm just dealing with people over the internet or over email, and I don't know their actual address.
Yeah.
But sometimes I will make, I can make a cushion with their logo on, for instance, and I've done that with a few.
Yeah.
Or just send them a packet of sweets. But I quite like the idea of a welcome pack in the post if I can get their address.
I quite like the idea of a fluffy flamingo.
I could go get a job lot, couldn't I?
Or a T-shirt with a flamingo on it.
You're on the wrong webinar, Bernard.
I suppose so, yeah. Maybe. Customer feedback forms and surveys, obviously anything that keeps the relationship on the right footing. Wow factor, so it's similar to the customer welcome letter basically, but things that you can do to really make someone think that they'd be, stupid to deal with anyone else. What was your example of the roofing contractor, Paul?
This was a guy who was struggling to get business in. He tried all sorts of social media and everything else, and then one day he decided that he'd go back to the old leaflet drop approach, and so everywhere he was doing a job, he'd get a half-mile radius, and he'd go and drop a leaflet through every door in that half mile to say, I'm working as so-and-so, come and see an example of our work, etc. And if you've got any needs, let me know. And he got a load of business from it, more than he ever did off his social media.
Yeah, it's called proximity marketing, isn't it? Yeah. Right, complaints. Obviously, complaints are a huge opportunity, because if you deal with a complaint properly, and really sort it properly, then people love you for it, and they're more loyal afterwards than they probably were before. Which means that, I know it depends on the type of business we got, and we obviously work for ourselves, most of us, but if you did have someone dealing with complaints, then they need to have authority and be able to be responsive and be able to do something straight away to solve a complaint up to certain limits without having to refer it back up the line to higher authority. Because the sooner and the cleaner the complaint is solved to people's satisfaction, the more goodwill you can generate from it. So complaints basically are an opportunity if they're dealt with properly.
That's interesting, that one, because I was in a session yesterday, and there was a guy there who was in the sort of the hotel trade, and he took over this hotel trade, and he went through an exercise of looking at that for service. And rather than seeking authority to do certain things, what they had to do was seek permission to say no to a customer request.
Oh, okay. So it was the other way around.
Yeah. So the assumption was the customer wanted something and they should get it. And if you couldn't do, the only reason you could say no to him was if you understood why, and to get permission from your superior to say no to it.
Yeah.
It changes the mindset totally.
Well, do you remember, it's probably quite a lot of years ago now, do you remember when Marks and Spencer first brought in that policy that you didn't have to have proof of purchase? If you weren't happy with something, you brought it back and they'd automatically refund you.
Yeah.
And everyone said, well, they're stupid, people will take advantage of it and they'll lose loads of money. But they didn't. I mean, people didn't take advantage of it. It's quite interesting.
And warehouse full of dirty clothes, mine.
Right, moving on. Right, so how could you get people to buy, well, more volume, basically, more frequently? So obvious things are a cross-sell and an upsell. It depends on the type of business we are, but the idea is that 34% of the time, if you say to someone at the point of sale, do you want one of these as well? Or do you want a larger amount? They'll say yes. And the classic examples are shoes and shoe polish for a cross-sell, or laptop and laptop bags. And for an upsell, things like large rather than standard coffee, and McDonald's go large, or McDonald's, do you want fries with that for the cross-sell? So to the extent that we can bring those sort of things into our business, that would probably work for all of us. So I don't know what you think there in terms of whether you could apply that.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the cross-selling thing, or maybe an upsell. It depends, on helping people publish their books.
Yeah.
So we talked about that the other day, didn't we? And I think that's definitely something that I want to look at. So yeah, I need to get on popcorn and start emailing people.
Okay. What about you, Kelly? Would that be anything you could use?
I could, but at the moment, I started my business late November, early December last year.
Okay.
So I've done some marketing.
Yeah.
I haven't had any leads from that.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like, I'm taking all of this in because it's going to be really helpful for when I do get some clients. I don't have any clients as yet,
Okay.
and that's why Karen kindly introduced me to this group, just to get some tips and ideas, some information. The information that you're providing is so valuable at the moment, but I'm just kind of like thinking, I don't have any clients just yet.
Yeah.
So I'm working on.
Clients.
You'll have all the slides though, so you'll be able to go back through it anyway. So
Yeah, which is what I'm intending to do. But at the moment, it's just trying to get that first client on board.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay.
They do tend to be the hardest ones to get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have got a perspective, but that will be just as and when. But I haven't had. I mean, I almost did get some business, like after I went live. But then she ended up doing what she needed to do because it had to be a quick turnaround, and I and she didn't tell me that, oh, it needs to be done by 5 o'clock. But then I've also joined some networking groups as well, so I'm hoping that through within those groups maybe I could get 1 or 2 referrals or something.
Yeah.
So I'm putting myself out there now, but with Zoom, I mean, that's really helpful. I mean, I'm quite shy actually, like.
No, you're not.
So when I first, me and my husband attended the FSB meeting the first time, and that was like, there must have been about 20 people there. But I suppose it's listening, isn't it, to listening to people, what they do and what they're selling and that. Do you know what I mean? Getting to understand their business and that. And then, so that was my first FSB face-to-face meeting, and then we've just had online meetings. Then I attended one of the BNI meetings just to get a taster. Karen invited me, and then I attended one of the South Wales BNI meetings as well. I'm also attending the Spotlight networking meeting in Newport as well. So I'm getting myself out there, and hopefully that I can generate some new leads from there.
You will do.
Have you got everything ready? Have you got everything ready, Callie, for when you do get one, to move quickly in terms of letters of engagement and all that sort of thing?
Yes, I have. Yeah, that's all in my folder, waiting for someone to say, "Oh, can you help me?"
And things like that are certainly where the FSB can help you.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, I've covered that 34% of the time. Apparently, if you have a cross-sell and an upsell, people take you up on it. This one, I actually got my hair cut for the first time in 3 months the other day at the hairdresser in the middle of Warwick. And I said to him, yeah, they basically have to book appointments now. You can't go in. But actually, I did. I went in and he said, if you come back in 10 minutes, I'll squeeze you in, but you're supposed to have an appointment, so fair enough. But I said, so you're booking appointments for everyone? He said, yeah. I said, so if you book them in 4 weeks' time rather than 5 weeks' time, you'll increase your turnover by 20%. So the moral of the story is, if we can basically use some sort of diary or CRM system to make sure that we contact the customer or client when they're next due to purchase, then obviously we'll get more business than if we don't do that and we leave it up to them. So that's going back to our diary or CRM system again, isn't it, really? Does that make sense? This one we mentioned, I had an example. A chimney sweep in the village a couple of years ago basically was doing a chimney up the road, so he put a flyer through all the doors saying, I'm in the village sweeping chimneys, anyone want their chimney done? So we gave him a ring. He came straight round, did our chimney, so obviously that was extra work for him, so that works.
Good money for him if you've got a central heating system.
This one is an interesting one. This is a real story. I worked with someone again a couple of years ago who basically does kitchens and bathrooms. And he'd done a kitchen for someone and they were really pleased with it. And then he was really upset a few months later to find that they'd gone and got their bathroom done and used someone else. So he asked them why, and it turned out that the reason was because they didn't realise that he did bathrooms as well as kitchens. And if they had done, they'd have used him for the bathrooms as well as the kitchens. So basically the lesson there is that if people don't know all the things we do, then they won't give us as much business as if they did know all the things we do, if you follow what I'm saying. So we do need to make sure that people know the different things that we do, because half the time they don't. These two go together really. Again, through networking, you can form joint ventures or affiliate type relationships with people. You can recommend their stuff, they can recommend your stuff, which basically means that when you see someone, you've got more things to sell, which again, probably means you can earn more money, because either you'll earn something on what you're selling for someone else, or they'll sell something for you to make up for you selling for them. But either way, these arguments here mean you're getting more business out of your existing customers than you otherwise would have done. So that's another argument for networking, as I'm sure we all know, really. So, any questions on any of that, or does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Excellent. Move on then. Right, so this is an interesting one as well. If you talk to a lot of small business owners and ask them when was the last time they put their prices up, they'll probably say that they haven't put them up for ages. And the main reason for it is they're scared to do so. But the trouble is, if you don't put your prices up on a regular basis, then effectively you're discounting. And I've done a few sort of presentations lately where, for a typical business, if you charge 10% less than you should, or 10% more, it can make up to 67% difference either way to your bottom line profit. Because typically the bottom line margin's only about 15–20% for most businesses. So a 10% difference in price makes a huge difference, which is why we need to differentiate from the others. So we're not competing on price. We need to be seen as specialist or expert with our target customer or client, which means then that we can charge higher prices, and 10% can make a huge difference, 20% obviously even more. And what we should be doing is looking to bundle in extra value. So the example I like to use is if you're a restaurant and you're quiet on a Monday night, then unless the Chancellor does something to help you, which I know he has done, but on a typical basis, you could discount 10 or 20% and decimate your profits. Or you could do something like bundling in extra value. So you say something along the lines of free dessert, free starter, free wine, free bottle of wine. Bundling in the extra value means you can keep your prices up and probably charge more, but it's perceived that you're giving better value, and actually it's much more profitable as a strategy. So rather than compete on prices, differentiate, be seen as a specialist, be seen as an expert, and bundle in extra value. But I think we're all aware of that, aren't we? And then, Callie, this might be for you, because when you get your first customer or client, yeah, if you've only got one offering, they'll buy whatever that offering is. If you had, say, 3 offerings, a basic, a middle, and a top of the range, then when you get customers and clients, some of them will buy your middle of the range, and some of them may even buy your top of the range, which means that you'll be receiving higher prices on average than if you've only got one offering. So it does pay to have more than one offering, and 3 is often seen as a good number to have.
Okay.
You know, a sort of gold, silver, bronze, or platinum, gold, silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody mentioned to me a while ago, don't start with your lowest package, start with your highest package, and then the middle one, and then the lower one.
Yeah.
So left to right that way.
Yeah.
It's a psychological thing.
Yeah, because if you start low, you can never get higher, but if you start high, you can always work down.
It's easier to come down than it is to get up.
Yeah. In fact, I think you should have arguably 4 packages, because what you should have is, say, a platinum, gold, and silver, and then you want to downsell. The downsell being the person who can't afford any of your offerings have something significantly cheaper that you can still make a profit on, because that brings them in as a customer. And then once they're in as a customer, it's 6 times easier and cheaper to market to existing customers. But then you can nurture them into being customers who'll buy your higher value offerings. So it does pay to have a downsell as well, which would be significantly cheaper.
So I have a retainer package and a pay-as-you-go.
Okay.
So the pay-as-you-go is at a rate of £21 an hour, right, and then the retainer is £180 for 10 hours.
Okay.
And I think that's quite reasonable in terms of, as a starting as a place to start, really, because I've had a look at other VA websites and they're charging much higher, but that's because they're more established, you know. So I mean, I think they're quite reasonable. And then when I did do an e-marketing campaign in January, I was offering a 10% discount, but no one took me up on it. So it was kind of like, oh, our Newport business is aware that there is such thing as a virtual assistant, and you know, would they take my offer up that I was offering a 10% discount? You know, it's all these.
There's two things there. Sorry to interrupt. I shouldn't have done
Okay.
that. There's two things there. One, discounting's not normally a very good idea unless you do what the pizza companies do, which is you charge a lot more in the first place before you discount. So really, you're not discounting at all.
Okay.
But the other thing is, the trouble with discounting, if there's a few problems with it. One, people expect it every time they come back and deal with you in the future. Right. Two, 10%'s not enough, because 10%'s neither here nor there. So people are only going to actually be swayed by 30, 40% discounts. 10% won't make any impact.
I did
make the profits.
Yeah, I did an hour about that. I, you know, kind of like thought 15, 20%, but then I thought, well, it doesn't make sense for the rate that I'm charging, you know. No. So I just kept it at 10%, but no one took me up on it. So I just kind of like thought, well, after today, I won't be offering a discount.
Offer extra value. Just think of things you can do that are extra value that you can bundle in, and then you can charge different prices for different sort of offerings.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, a good thing is you know, a lumpy mail campaign, a postal campaign to, you know, to certain businesses in your area. You know, in Newport, for instance, Callie, and you know, put something like a bar of chocolate in the post. Just something as simple as that, because people remember it, and it doesn't cost an awful lot either. So it's all about flamingoing yourself.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I know somebody at the moment who is. It's been done loads of times before, but it seems to work. You know, she's put a Cadbury's Boost in the post to her target market. You know, and she said she's already started getting, you know, inquiries. Because people are just remembering, oh, you know, you sent me a boost. She's an IT company, so she's offering to boost their business.
That's good. That.
Yeah, Callie, you could send something else, or you could send a boost. You know, anything.
I think as well, if you're selling VA services, the question is as well as you talked about businesses a couple of times there, Callie, and the VA stuff is more likely to be taken up by an individual than the business, because it's the individual that is suffering from the lack of time.
Yes,
etc. So if you can find the right position, like a chief exec or the owner of the business, as opposed to being handed off by gatekeepers, you can you're much better identify with them, because they're the people with the real need. Well, the other thing on that is I was talking to a lady yesterday, and she's got well, I know two of them actually, and they both got franchises with Pink Spaghetti.
Right,
and nearly all of they're doing well. They've been going about 2 or 3 years, and nearly all of their leads and business has come from networking.
Which you're starting to do. Which is what you do.
I mean, and I do post things on LinkedIn, but because I'm not that familiar with social media, so that's a new area that I'm learning at the moment as well. You know, it's like finding out, you know, who my target market is, who would be interested. There's a whole load of stuff that I'm kind of like, sometimes it's like banging your head against a brick wall, because I kind of like think it's quite, you know, I know
a lot of VAs, and what happened with them with this whole COVID-19 thing, their business just dropped off a cliff.
Yes, it can do, yes.
The people were working from home, got a bit more time to do some of these things themselves, and a number of them just chose to use it to retrain and find another area. So one decided to train as a hypnotherapist and that sort of thing, because because of the risk of the VA thing.
I mean, and that is so true. Which is, I mean, I also have a full-time job as well. So at the moment, I'm just working part-time with them.
Yeah.
So I thought the days that I'm not doing any, the days when I'm not working with them, I'm sorting out the VA work, you know, like, and obviously taking up on any networking meetings on Zoom, for example, on Thursdays sort of thing. So then that helps me build.
But for me, if I've got a VA, then one of the key things for me would be their availability at the time that I need them.
Yes.
And that's because you can't necessarily guarantee if you've got a job running alongside it as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the pros and cons are for a VA, you know, like if you're starting out and you haven't got any clients at the moment, you're struggling for income.
Oh yeah,
big time to know. So it's that leap of faith that you take. Either you accept that, right, okay, you're going to be working twice as hard to make sure that you can get clients on board. If you don't, then what do? And like, you know, look, you know, I have a husband, so he kind of like helps me, but I want to still have my independence as well, that I'm bringing in money myself, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So, you know, I've taken the opportunity, but I've also mentioned in the networking event, at networking meetings as well, that I'm also available to pick up things on a weekend as well.
You don't need to make a big thing of the fact that you are working. Just keep it quiet, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's probably one or two, there could be business coming my way, but I just want to put them in the picture that I won't be on tap, basically. That, you know, they would, you know, they do have to give me, you know, a couple of hours notice if they wanted something doing, but then it's not something that. But it's not something that, you know, I'd be able to pick up immediately, but I could pick up after my full-time job. So, you know, when I finish at 5:30, I could do some pick up VA work then, but then I'm also available on the weekend. So, you know, to someone, it's like, oh, well, at least she's flexible in terms of she doesn't just work Monday to Friday for a company full-time. She's also managing her VA business, but is also flexible to work on the weekend.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm conscious of time, so I'll cut down, but yeah.
Sure.
In terms of pricing, again, this is obvious. I'm not saying you haven't seen it before, but it's worth remembering that £10, £10.97 and £10.99 don't see much difference, you know, in terms of to the consumer. But that's a 10% difference between that and that, basically, isn't it? So, you know, all I'm saying is, in terms of prices, if you can edge your prices up a bit, then do, because it can make a difference. And if you can bundle in extra value and have extra packages, that makes a difference as well. And golden rule, no discounting, because if you go through the numbers of what happens to your bottom line generally when you discount, it decimates your profits. And 10% discounts neither here nor there anyway. It probably has to be 30, 40%, and then you really are in trouble. So no discounting.
Okay.
Right, I've got a numerical example. I'll go through this quickly because I don't want to keep you all night, obviously. But so this is proving what happens with discounting. So your price is 100, your variable cost is 65. Depends on the type of business. And you're selling 10,000 of these things, which means you're making 35 on each of them. So you'd make 350,000 profit, gross profit. Your overheads are 200,000, so your operating profit, your bottom line profit's 150,000. Those figures are across a whole range of industries. The typical gross margin's about 30-35%, and the typical net margin's about 12 or 15%. Varies, obviously, for service businesses, it's mainly net margin rather than gross margin. But these are fairly typical figures for any business. If you discount by 10%, the numbers become 90 instead of 100 as a price, still costs you 65 to make the things. You're selling 10,000. Obviously, you might sell a few more, but we'll see about that. Your gross profit goes from 350 down to 250,000. Your overheads are still 200,000. So your operating profit for a typical business across a whole range of industries, your bottom line profit falls from 150,000 to 50,000. So a 10% discount in price reduces your profit at the bottom line by 67%. Obviously, it depends on where you are, and it won't be for every business, but that's the sort of danger of discounting. Whereas if you increase by 10%.
Especially if your cost base remains the same.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. Which, if we assume the volume hasn't changed, which is the assumption I'm making, I'll come back to that. If the volume hasn't changed, then the costs won't have changed. So if you charge 10% more, you've still got all the same figures, but now you're making 450,000 gross profit instead of 350,000. Still got your overheads the same. Your bottom line profit is now 250,000. So that's 67% higher than your original. This one's 67% lower. But put another way, the difference between putting your prices up 10% and lowering your prices by 10% is a 400% difference in profit. Now, that's not true for every business, but those are average figures across a whole range of industries and businesses, apparently. So that's why discounting is a dangerous thing to do, really. And that's only for 10%, and 10% won't make much. You'd have to sell an awful lot more volume. I think you'd have to sell 24% more volume to make up for a 10% discount. So that's the message. But I'll send you the slides and you can have a look through the figures yourselves. Okay with that? So just quickly then, customer lifetime value. The idea is that we want to keep our customers longer. And the frightening thing is that 68% of customers leave and go somewhere else because they felt neglected. So therefore, that's why we need to make proactive, regular effort to keep in touch with them. That's why a CRM system helps us do that. And that's why it's a really sound, good strategy to reactivate any past customers. Obviously, I'm speaking to Karen now more than Callie, I suppose. But if you've got customers who've stopped dealing with you, a really good strategy is to come up with an offer and then write to them individually and make this offer to them and say, tell them how much you've missed them. And you could easily reactivate quite a lot of them. It's called a customer reactivation strategy. And the obvious point is your best customers are your existing customers who are 6 times cheaper and easier to sell to, and your worst customers are your new customers who tend to be price shoppers, which is why I was saying, Callie, that a downsell works because it gets people in to become existing customers, so then you can sell to them in the future. So just to summarize, the formula is price times volume times how long you keep people times the number of new referrals is what maximizes your sales and profit. So the higher your average price, the greater your volume, the longer people stay, the more referrals and testimonials they give you. All 4 of those things are what maximize your sales and profit. That makes sense. And so to finish off with, we've just put a list together of things you could be doing right now, which would be, things you could do even if you're still in some sort of form of lockdown. The first thing is you could work out who past customers are that you could reactivate, or people who don't know what you do, Callie, which would be a similar thing. Who do you know that don't realize what you do and you could make them an offer?
Yeah.
You could work out whether you could have a cross-sell and an upsell and work out what that would look like. You could work out what your different pricing packages are. So if you haven't finalized that, you could be doing that now. You could have a customer welcome letter and strategy, some sort of welcome letter, pack, offer, wow, shock and awe package, whatever you want to call it. You could look at how you could raise your prices rather than reduce them by adding in extra value and by differentiating yourself from your competitors. So what could you do to be perceived as being different to other VAs in the area? You could work out how you could have a referral scheme. I think that's it. So all of those are things you could be doing right now.
Yeah.
Or a testimonial scheme as well. I think that's it.
I think I've given you a testimonial, haven't I, Callie?
You have, yes, thank you.
Excellent. Well, you could give each other testimonials. That would be a good idea. And so that's basically where we are. Those are our contact details. Paul is going to be running next week's webinar, and it's about systemizing processes and building in resilience. So that's it, really. So I hope you found that useful. I'm sorry the numbers are so low, but we were still able to get through some useful stuff for you. So I think it was still worth coming. So
The difference is when the numbers are low, Bernard, is you do get the opportunity to focus a bit more, and for it to become a bit more interactive. So hopefully Karen and Callie get something from the fact that we can discuss more rather than have to do everything via chat.
Yeah. I hope you found that useful, and we'll send you the slides and the recording.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and I'm speaking to you in a couple of weeks, Karen. And have I got your email address, Callie, or do you just want me to send it by Karen again?
I can ping you an email. I
Yeah.
can ping you my email address.
Yeah, I keep forgetting because I speak to Bernard every couple of weeks. I keep forgetting to give him your email address, Callie. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, if you send me.
I'll email you, Bernard, and then you've got that on file.
Okay.
Thanks, Karen.
It's all right. Oh, I just thought there's a chocolate bar called a time out, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
You can send that to help people take time out of their business.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking of a diary as well, but a diary costs a bit more, doesn't it?
Yes. Most people use their phones these days and iPads and tablets, don't they?
Yeah.
There are still a few people that will use a paper diary.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised, but yeah, and even just a little notebook or a notepad.
Yeah, little notebook. Yeah.
Send them a watch.
Yeah, Rolex. Yeah.
A chocolate watch.
Rolex.
Chocolate watch.
Send them a watch saying you're struggling with your time.
Yeah.
You can get those chocolate. No, the trouble with the chocolate watches, it probably melts in the post.
Or they might get eaten, you know, it's one or the other.
Actually, that reminds me, well, I won't tell you that because we're running out of time, but next week, if I remember, I've got a story about turkey and Christmas that I can tell you, which is true. That's for another day. Right. Anyway.
You're going to send everybody a turkey?
I've got a story about turkey. Anyway, I'll tell you next week. Right, okay. Thanks very much for attending, folks, and we'll send you the recording and the slides.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Cheers.
Thanks, Colin. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Just the two of us left, mate?
Yeah. End the meetings. No, I won't end the meeting yet, but I've got to end the recording.